Hi, everybody. I am Lori Ann. I am that gal from Milton, Ontario, Canada, and I am with.
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to our How We See It podcast. We have a special guest with us tonight, and Lori Ann's going to introduce her.
So, really excited to have Dominique here. Dominique is going to talk to us about her book that she just wrote, which is themed as Them. And if I can just quickly say that, to help empower many. But the whole subject is about if you were abused and how to handle it, how to get over it. And I'm sure that there's a lot more that I'm not even going to be able to say in this introduction. So thank you so much, Dominique, for being here. And we were talking about your name and just love it. And so there's a connection there already.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it. This is just an amazing opportunity for me. I feel that the message that I have for other people out there is something that needs to be spoken about. As you said, the name of my book is Them. It does stand for To Help Empower Many. And the book covers many forms of abuse, not just sexual abuse, not just physical abuse, but it touches on every bit. Emotional abuse, self-abuse, physical abuse from parents, what to do when your children are abused, how to overcome those things, and also how to recognize those things in your own life, or maybe in the life of your loved ones. So that's kind of a synopsis of what that book is about.
Okay, so what did a certain event give you the motivation to write this book, or was it a series of things?
Well, it was a series of events that led up to the book, but the actual motivation of the book isn't really abuse. It was, I had a tumor in my spine, and I thought, oh, I need to do this right now because there may not be another time. So that's kind of what sparked the I better do it now kind of emotion. But the abuses that happened to me as a child, to me as an adolescent, and through my adult years, also seeing my children get abused, going through the legal system, deciding not to do the legal system with some of it. All of those things are some of the things people aren't expecting when they start that endeavor. And when you start to try to heal, there's many forms of healing. It doesn't always come from justice. So it's kind of learning that and understanding that you might go through the justice system, but you may not get that justice that you think you deserve.
I was just going to ask you, going through the system, how much resistance is there for the person trying to get through it?
Well, it took us 3 years, and that was here in the state of Texas. It took us 3 years to get him convicted. And ultimately, he ended up pleading guilty after 3 years. And it was a very hard thing because it was my stepdaughter, and she had been abused for 8 years. He had been sexually abusing her for 8 years of her life, starting at the age of 8 to the age of 16.
Wow.
The problem with abuse is only 1% of abuse cases actually even get talked to at a DA's office, and those 1%, only 1% of those actually get convicted. It is very hard to convict child abuse cases because children's memories are not that good. And so they have to have something very definitive that they can absolutely 100% say it happened on this day at this time, and this is what it was. And if they don't have that, most often than not, they are not going to take the case. And that was a shock. I did not know that going into this whole system.
That's hard to believe.
It is absolutely ridiculous. And in fact, there's a lot of laws here in Texas that need to be changed. When my other daughter on prom night was sexually assaulted. She was 16. We went to take her to a children's hospital, and you see what's called a SANE nurse, which stands for sexual assault nurse. That SANE nurse literally looks at you and says, if you are not pressing charges because she is 16, we will not send in a rape kit. So you're asking a 16-year-old on the spot to throw her friend under the bus, throw the parents where she was drinking, under the bus. And she was like, I'm not going to be that girl. And I'm like, this is crazy. They give you a pamphlet that literally tells you, really, you were drinking, probably not going to really go to court. It's not really up to you. It's up to a DA. And it was all these things all at once in an emergency room setting with a girl who's traumatized. And so she just opted not to do it. And 2 weeks later, wanted to do something about it. But at that point, it was already too late. They wouldn't do a rape kit. They wouldn't do any of those things. So there's a lot of lacking in this environment that needs to be addressed. And so that's something I want people to understand. There's a lot of rules and regulations that we don't, as regular people, realize are out there. You know, we just think it's so cut and dry, and it's so far from that.
Wow. That's so how are your daughters doing since all this has happened?
Honestly, they're doing very well. My stepdaughter, who was the one who was abused for 8 years, when she came into our home, she literally was mute. She wouldn't talk to anybody but my daughter. Would whisper in her ear, and she would be like, "Can I get a glass of water? Ask for water." She would not talk to us. She was mute. She ended up going into a mental institution for a little while. And today, she is a mother of 3, and she is a thriving adult. She works in the jail system now, and she's doing wonderful. But it took a long time to get there. But it also took people to recognize that she needed help. Someone needed to intervene and step in and do something. Recognize the signs of when a child is hurting, when a child is getting abused. Because a lot of times we ignore it because we as adults don't want to deal with it either. You know, especially if it's somebody that you know or somebody that you love. So very hard for us to see them in a different light. And that makes it very difficult for children to be bullied.
So go ahead, Lori.
I was just going to say, it's not just difficult for children, it's difficult for adults, it's difficult for all ages to come out. And sometimes even as an adult, you remember something.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and even as your adult, whether you're 20, 30, or 40, you know, there are certain people I've known of who came out, and other people just say, well, do you know that, you know, I know somebody who was abused worse than you. Well, that's not what they need to hear. It doesn't matter the extent of that abuse. That is mental health. Like, whoa, I trusted someone, they weren't there, or I went, on a date, whether it's a man or a woman. I'm sorry, but true, because both sides can be abused. And that's what disturbs me, is that when you have somebody going, well, I've got a better story than you, they don't want to hear the better story. They need to have that them of us coming together. That I love.
Absolutely. I actually, in my book, I talk about this because I was abused when I was very young, from the time I was 8 to 12, and I was raped at 14. 2 different perpetrators. Left home at 16. One thing that I noticed in my adult life, I got into very abusive relationships, physically and mentally. And the one thing I kept telling myself was, I'm not a victim because I'm not as bad as they have it. First time I went to a domestic violence center, because in the state of Colorado, if your spouse gets arrested for domestic violence, you are automatically have to go to an advocacy center, and you have to go to at least one time of counseling. So I'm sitting there in this group, and I'm looking at these other women, and one has a black eye or their lip is split, and I don't look like that. In my head, I'm like, I'm not one of them. Again, there's that word, them. I'm not one of them, because mine isn't as bad as that. But the problem is I do just what you were saying. I tried to minimize what was happening to me and saying, oh, it's not as bad as mine or not as bad as theirs. Just as other people say, yours isn't as bad as mine. It's all abuse. It's all forms of abuse. It doesn't matter how big or little it is. It's what it does to your psyche that matters. Because the littlest word or the biggest hit, it had just as much damage. It doesn't matter. It's all abuse. And that's what we need to recognize. We need to quit saying mine isn't as bad as yours, or hers was way worse than what you had it. It doesn't matter. That's not what they need to hear. They need to validate how they feel and understand that, yes, you were abused and this was wrong. It doesn't matter how bad it is. And that's part of what I say in my book too, because it's just so important that we don't bring people down. We need to be there to lift them up and tell them, you're right. What happened to you was absolutely wrong. It should never have happened. And I'm here for you no matter what. If you just want to cry, I will cry with you. If you want me just to be quiet and let you sit here and just talk, I'll do that too. But we need to understand that their abuse, no matter big or small, it's still abuse. It's very, very important to listen.
And it's very important for the mindset to go over that, to be able to say, hey, somebody's listening to me, and accepting the fact that, and even if I hear your story and it's worse, but you're saying, you're not telling me it's worse. You're supporting me, saying, what you went through was horrible. You're not going to be sitting there telling me my story. And it happens too in marriages. It's not just single people. And
Absolutely.
so yeah, so I love this because you're taking every aspect of
Yeah,
abuse. It's not just
I
one.
didn't want that. I didn't want it to be about one form because there's so many forms out there. Even our own self-abuse is something I talk about that we do on a daily basis, almost everybody, and we don't even realize it. Such as, that was so stupid, I don't know why I did that. Me telling myself that I'm being stupid not only is telling myself that I'm being stupid, but it is also telling everybody else in that room, I'm giving you permission to blame me and say that I'm stupid. And that is not something we should do. We have enough people in this world that want to bring us down. We should not be one of them.
Yeah.
You know?
So since what happened to you at that such an early age, from 8 to 12, I think you said, correct?
Correct.
So how long did it take you from 12 years old to get past all that?
Well, back then, it was a little different time frame than it is now. Things weren't nearly as recognized. And we had, back then, when the guy who raped me, when the police came into our house, talked to my father and my stepmom, and they said, no, we are not going to press charges. And that was the end of it. Cops left, and they looked at me and they said, this is it. We're not talking about this outside of the family. It stays here. It doesn't go anywhere else. And I kind of delved into reading every single book I could find on understanding human behavior. And every psychology book out there, pretty much, I just delved into reading almost my entire life. And I was kind of, in a sense, doing my own self-help because I didn't know, I didn't understand. And, for a while I was angry with God and had to make peace with a lot of things that weren't in my control. And that's what I had to understand, that this wasn't my control. This was their path that they had to went on. For whatever reason, that person became a pedophile, that person became an abuser, and I, for some reason, crossed their path. But their path does not have to be my path. I can create my own path. And that is what I chose. And I didn't want to give them more power than what they already had over me. And it was a choice. Everything is about choices that we make in our life. And at some point, you have to choose who's going to have control over you, you or the person that hurt you.
So
and hands down, you're the best one to do it.
it was your mindset, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Your mindset. You changed your mindset in order to get past it.
Yes, I decided I wasn't going to be a victim anymore, that I did not want to allow that. Now, I say that with a grain of salt because when I was younger, I refused to believe I was a victim. So if you don't even want to believe what's happening to you, because I was very stubborn and I didn't want to be a statistic. So I was like, I am not one of these people. Well, the problem with that is I was still hurting inside. I wasn't healed. So my mindset was still victim mentality, even though I was not fully aware of that in my early 20s. And when you have victim mentality, you tend to attract perpetrators, people who are predatory. And because you give off certain signals, such as, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Did I hurt your feelings? I didn't mean to. I shouldn't have said that. Apologizing for everything that you do that made them upset. Those are key things that people hone in on who are predatory, because that tells them they can manipulate you. They can mold you into what they want you to be. And so we have to start being more empowered in ourselves to stop that right in its tracks. If someone says, hey, that's your fault, be like, actually, it's not my fault. No, it wasn't. It had nothing to do with me. I'm sorry it bothers you, but that's not my fault. That's an issue you have. And start kind of reversing it and taking control of your life, taking it back. Taking back your life is basically what it's all about.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned the fact that predators know what to look for. And
Yes.
When you see these women that have been in the sex trade, they've been rescued or anything like that out of the pedophiles, that's the first thing they say. Well, this guy did this. He knew, and
Yeah, and they do know. When I was 18 years old, I had mentioned I had left home at 16. I moved to the mountains, and from there I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. When I lived in Las Vegas, Nevada, I became a stripper. I had never even been in a nightclub in my entire life. And here I was about to go and get on a stage and dance. And it was the most terrifying thing I had ever done in my life. I was all alone. I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. I lived in a weekly motel off of 4th and Fremont in a seedy area. And I did this job, threw up my first night everywhere, and danced one time in 8 hours. Because it was the hardest thing I ever did. Well, from there, I answered an ad in the paper for modeling. And I went to this building, went in there, met the receptionist, they took pictures. Long story short, they said I became a feature for the month, and I was going to go to Thailand, me and 12 other girls. Okay? Yeah, see, I didn't.
Wow.
I didn't know what that meant. And then he said, I need your passport. I'll be holding all of them so you don't lose them.
Oh.
And so when this all occurred, I was super excited. I told my best friend. She in turn told her mom. 20 years ago, there used to be a TV show called, or a movie, it was Not Without My Daughter. It was sort of the name of it. And she had just watched it. And she told my friend, she goes, you tell her to go to the police right now. She's not coming home. And so I did. I called the police, kind of felt stupid. I was like, so this is what's happening. And they immediately directed me to fraud. Fraud directed me to the FBI. I ended up going undercover with the FBI, and I got this business shut down. It saved me and 11 other girls from getting sold over in Thailand.
Oh my God.
All because I answered a modeling ad, and because I was naive. I didn't know, and I believed every word this man said to me because I was broken. I needed to hear I was beautiful. I needed to hear that I was loved and that I was going to have this great time and he was going to take care of me. And when you're broken, those words are amazing. So that's why it's so detrimental to heal from everything, because you just don't know where it's going to land you and who's going to cross those paths. Because he knows those men like that, they look at you and they see the broken, they see that brokenness inside you.
There's a really important thing that I taught my daughter just as you're saying this, because my mother taught it to me and I taught it to her, and some of these things are worthwhile passing down. So that if you see a white van and it's following you, run the other way, find a home, find a place to hide. And it never happened to me, but it happened to her. And she still says to me, she goes, Mom, thank you so much, because what you told me was true. And because I told her about trafficking, I was lucky. I did go into modeling and I was told that I was too fat at 122 pounds. So if somebody's telling you that, then you know that you're fine. They're realistic because they're telling you a lie. You're not too fat at that age. I was 5'9", 122. Sorry, baby. I don't want to be your model, because the next thing that happens there is that you can't be skinny enough. But you're absolutely right, though. The ones that are saying no matter, they'll just sit there and they'll go, oh, I can get you into a movie or I can get you into something. And same thing with guys. Again, I want to stipulate the fact that there's a lot of this that happens in our world. You look at India and some other places in that area that there are young men that are suffering through the same things, and in North America. So I love what you're saying, but understand, everybody listening, this is not just a female issue. It has caused men, even like literally I've met men who have not been able to talk about their circumstances when they were younger, and they moved on to having issues about and I hope I don't say anything that will disturb anybody, but issues of that, having this happen to me, am I gay now, or am I, you know what I'm saying? Like there becomes that questionable thing about your own physicality, whether you're a female, whether you're a male.
I do. I actually touch a little bit on that in my book as well, about men being abused, because I have one of my best friends who was abused at a very young age, and he is gay, and he struggles with that. He's like, did I turn gay, or was I always gay? Did he make me gay? And point is, it doesn't matter either way. He's gay, and I love him to death, totally. But he never healed from what happened to him, because I think for men it's doubly hard. Women can come out and say, I was sexually abused, emotionally abused, physically abused. Nobody bats an eye. everybody goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Men come out and they say this and they go, what are you, they have choice words. And they don't believe that a man can be physically abused or sexually assaulted because they're men and they're strong and they're supposed to be this societal, what society says. And that's just not the case. There are some very mean women. There are very mean men. And when you're a little child, it doesn't matter. And even when you're a grown man who doesn't hit women, a woman can still abuse a man. And I think that's a part of society that gets very, very much the raw end of the stick, because not only do they really suffer in silence, if they do say something to somebody, they usually get ridiculed. And it's a very sad situation.
Well, I grew up, I was a victim of physical and emotional abuse. Okay. And I was able, so how I coped, I put it over here in a little box and stayed away from it. Because when I opened that box, I could work myself up into a rage thinking about it.
Absolutely, because it's not a healed portion of you.
Because I got past it. It's over there, and my kids always ask me, "Well, Dad, how come you and Papa don't talk to each other and all that?" So it's just stuff that happened when I was a kid. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal, And because they don't need to know that, it's. I went through it, but I made sure that I didn't repeat the cycle.
Right, and that's what's the most important, is to recognize it. And I talk about this. Recognize it, acknowledge it, and move past it, overcome it. That doesn't mean forget it. And people sometimes think, oh, if you forgive, you forget. It doesn't really work that way, because you're never going to forget it. It will never go away. It's going to always creep up in some weird way, in some portion in your life, at some point. But the thing is, when it creeps up, you're able to go, oh, let me put that back down. I don't need to deal with that right now.
Yeah.
Or on the same token, sometimes you need to give it that 2 to 5 minutes that it needs to creep up and go, oh yeah, let me mourn for that for half a second, and then move on. Give it the time that it needs, and then just continue on with your day. Don't let it debilitate you. Don't let it ruin your entire week or month. Because some people they get stuck in that memory and they can't pull themselves out. And we have to realize that it's just a memory. Create a new one. Create something else. If you have triggers, find something else to make that trigger a better trigger. I had a trigger that I didn't know I had when I was dating my ex-husband. He came up to massage my shoulders and I lost it. I just went crazy in this bar, and I'm sure and this was our first day. I'm sure he thought I was absolutely lunatic, and he went to go massage my shoulders, and I freaked out. I thought he was going to put his hands around my neck, and I just lost my mind. And I realized, oh, this is a problem. This is not a good trigger. This is a really bad trigger to have. And so I had to reassociate that emotion with feeling good. I had to let him, somebody you trust, obviously, put his hands on my shoulders. Let me relax. Let me take little baby steps until I could associate that with, oh, that massage feels kind of nice, And I had to reassociate that in my head. And it takes time to do, but you can reassociate your triggers. And it's really important, if you find you have them, to reassociate them.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
I can relate to that, by the way. But here's the strange thing, is that I don't want to get into anything too big, but my ex-husband, I didn't so much like him touching me. And yet when I left him, and there's a lot of history behind all of this, but when I left him and I was with the next person, it didn't bother me that that person touched me. He could actually massage me and rub my hair, and I'm going, don't stop. Like, it can be also about that, right? Just that feeling that, okay,
yeah, well,
this isn't going to.
And there could have been something else that maybe reminded you more with the other person.
That's right.
That made it feel a little different.
Yeah.
So there could have been other things, other personality triggers that came along with that touch with that particular person. And sometimes we don't realize that. Sometimes it can be a scent. It can be anything. And so between the scent and what they're doing, you're like, oh, don't do that. And sometimes don't even always know why. We just have to learn. I would say, write them down. When that starts happening, write down what's going on around you. see what might be triggering it. It may not just be the touch. It might be a smell or something you saw, something they said verbally or something they did. And write all the situation down, because eventually you start finding those commonalities as to why that's occurring. Because like you said, it didn't happen
That's
with somebody
very
else.
interesting.
There could have
Writing them
been
down,
other
yeah.
factors.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Sorry, that was just really interesting. You could say there could be other factors, including just like watching television or a scent that's happening at the time, or it may not be
Right.
that particular individual that's causing that feeling. It could be something that brought back something from.
Right. And you may not even realize it,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just, you know, it's just learning your own body, learning what's happening at the time that it's occurring. Try to think of everything around you that's going on. Just write it down. Don't even look at it after you write it. Just put it in a drawer. Maybe in a week's time, go back when that emotion is not there, when it's not strong, and go back and look at it and then go, next time it happens, put it in that same drawer. And after a few times, you're going to start noticing when you go back and read, oh, look at there. Every time I smell fruit, I smell apples, you know, whatever it may be. And that's when you're going to start realizing there's something with that that's causing it. It really does help kind of reassociate the triggers and know what really causes them.
So, Roy, did you have a question?
Well, so based on what happened to you, so when your stepdaughter and your daughter came along, so you could be an advocate for them because you understood, you have empathy, you've been there.
Yes. And it was actually very hard. It was very cathartic for me as well, because I, in turn, we did go to court and we went through that whole process. And the other one, she opted not to do that because she didn't want to be that girl, 16 years old at the school, everybody making fun of. And so I saw both sides of it. But the one thing that remained consistent, no matter who got justice and who didn't, the feelings were still there, because those feelings had to be dealt with. It doesn't matter if you get justice and he goes to jail, or you don't get justice and they don't go to jail. You still feel the same way inside. And ultimately, that's what you have to heal. Justice isn't always going to do it, and what we think is right or wrong. And nobody in the world can tell somebody how to heal or how to feel or compare their story to another person's story. Because, you know, it's like that elephant, you know, our three blind men on the elephant. Everybody had a different story because they all perceive things differently. And so it's very important to remember that my story, their story, they were all different. They were similar, but we also had very different feelings. I mean, my daughter, she for a very long time was like, you know, I'm not like you. I'm not strong like you. I can't be better like you. And, you know, and I told her, I said, here's the thing, baby, you're still here. So you're a lot stronger than you think. So, you know, it's just a different way of dealing with things. And you just have to kind of recognize that people don't deal with the way we think they should. They're going to deal with it in their own way. And we just have to give them that space and to let them know that we're here whenever they're ready to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's pretty amazing for you, for what happened to you, you know, almost getting sold into slavery, had your friend's mom not helped you.
Right.
I mean, oh my gosh, can you imagine where you'd be today?
I would not be here.
and then even going undercover for the FBI. I mean, from there to the FBI, and then writing a book about your experiences and being an advocate to people for that. I mean, that's
Yes.
pretty freaking amazing.
Well, thank you.
It is.
It really is.
Definitely.
So how can people reach out to you if they want to reach out to you?
They're able to reach out to me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page called T.H.E.M, T-H-E-M,
Okay.
Help Empower Many. They can also, on Amazon, if they reach out to me on Amazon through the page there, I will always respond. And they can always reach out to me through email as well.
Okay. So your book is available on Amazon.
Correct. It's on ebook and on paperback as well.
Okay, good. So I don't know about you, Lorianne, but this was an awesome interview.
I know, and it makes me kind of cry when kind of cry because I can actually fully connect with that from when I was in my teens and 20s. But don't say anything because you're a bad girl if you do. Because one thing that young girls, and you just said it out there, you're not asking for it. It's not about you, and that's what they do. But even young boys, again, I want to really iterate this very strongly. This is about boys, girls, men, women. It happens everywhere. But I'm thinking while you're talking, I can't wait till you write the next book that I'm going to tell you that you have to write.
I'm actually on the process of writing a second book. So
Yeah,
Right.
but with what you're saying, and you're going to have to tell us about that, but what you're saying about it is too, is if you lose somebody, so the passing of somebody, that is a really hard thing to do. Like this isn't really about it, but what you're saying has a lot to transition into that world too, because when you say, oh, I lost a friend, oh, but I lost a child, oh, I lost my husband, oh, but I lost my sister, and there's that. But like you were saying about this, the same thing with losses is that everybody, what you're telling me is your book is saying everybody has the right to their story. And I love that you said that. Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and what is your next story? Do you want to give us an idea before we
Well,
go?
I'm actually starting in December. I'm actually right now being featured in another book called Overcoming Obstacles, and a bunch of people are getting together, and we're doing that right now. That'll be out in November, and then I'm starting one in December.
Okay.
Great. Great.
Well, I look forward to if you can take that advice from me, because it's really, it runs around the same lines, and you already have all the abilities.
Real quick,
So
my book was
thank you.
dedicated to a friend who passed away. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it was our pleasure. And I'll say, I mean, for someone that's experienced all you've experienced, you got an awesome attitude.
Thank you. It took a long time to get there.
I mean,
I totally agree. Smiles, and through a very difficult, I was even tearing up while you're still sitting there going, we can do this. Yes, we can.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes, we can.
I mean, you have definitely conquered it. You've owned it. I mean, it's great. It's great. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
well,
appreciate it.
Yep, it's been a pleasure having you, and we may reach out to you at some point in the future to kind of get an update.
All right, great. I would love to hear back from you guys.
Okay.
Beautiful. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in our calendar for everybody that we have had podcasts with. I know that they have a story coming, and this is so beautiful about this, is learning more about you than just your book.
Yeah.
And
Would
we
love
look
to do
forward
it.
to having a celebration, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
All right,
on the email
awesome.
together.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, thank you guys.
All right.
Thank you so
for
much.
coming on. We
I
appreciate
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.